Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Mikey's Moments. It's been a couple weeks. As I've said in the past, life gets in the way. Something about this time of year, I just kind of get caught in my own head. I've been working some overtime, so I've missed a few bits. Well, let's do a little housekeeping. To go along with that, for me, I have to be creative. I have to have a creative outlet. And with that, I'm starting a new thing, the Definitive 3 by Mikey. And definitive means those are set in stone. So if you disagree, that's fine. You can be wrong. But when you go watch one of my reels, it's the Definitive 3. And you can find that on my Facebook account. You can find that here on the shorts. You can find it on Twitter. And you can find it on my Instagram. All the links are in my page here. If you haven't subscribed, please do. And if you like it, please like it. And hopefully you'll go look at the Definitive 3 and see if I can't start getting some followings there too. Because I can do those daily. They're quick, they're easy, they're to the point. And I'm going to try to get this to once a week like I've said. I've got to release those creative juices. Now enough about me. And let's talk about this week's episode. And this week's episode is Divas in Sports. And how I believe they're destroying the games that we love. And not for in a bad way. They're making things difficult. They're taking away from those who they shouldn't and be given to those who they shouldn't have. And I'll explain that as we go along. So let's start with the first sport to kind of idolize divas. And in my opinion, that'd be the National Hockey League. And their first diva was the great one, Wayne Gretzky. Now, I'm not going to speak ill, I guess is the word I'm looking for. But Mr. Gretzky, amazing skater, natural scorer. I wouldn't call him a hockey player. I watched him at the Joe Louis Arena live. By the way, he got beat by Steve Yzerman and the Red Wings because they played as a team. He played as a diva skating around the ice, trying not to get hit, looking for the penalties when someone even put a stick near him. And the NHL went with that because he was their golden boy. And then they passed that golden boy on to Sidney Crosby, who's the same way. Yes, they won. They won championships. They won scoring titles. And you know their names. They're synonymous with the sport now. But because they were divas. Me, personally, I prefer a Steve Yzerman who knew he couldn't score, couldn't win, couldn't do it with the rest of the team. And it took him 20 years before he got to lift the Stanley Cup. But he did it as a team. He didn't go out. Steve was a scorer when he first came in the league, but he realized there was more to the game of hockey. He could have been a diva, but he chose not to be. And for that, he has mad respect from me, Mikey. And then the NBA. In the 80s, I watched basketball. I haven't watched basketball very much anymore because of the diva culture that it's bred. Excuse me, wrong word. And it started with Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. The NBA said, hey, look, we've got these two rivals. They're on two of the most historic franchises. Let's let them get away with a little more. And they did. Magic was the type of diva where it was showtime, so he traveled a little more. He was able to get the calls a little more. Larry was more of a, hey, I'm going to get the ball, I'm going to score, and you're not going to be able to stop me type of diva. But when someone did try to stop him and the call didn't go his way, then he would get vocal. Now, I understand that this happens, but it's gone on. And now we have LeBron. LeBron flops. LeBron whines. LeBron cries. LeBron gets a cramp and needs to be taken off the court. If something doesn't go his way, it was somebody else's fault. He doesn't win the NBA championship and he looks to retire. He can't win in Cleveland, he goes to Miami. He can't win in Miami. After he wins in Miami, he goes back to Cleveland. He bounces around chasing championships instead of becoming a champion. Michael Jordan, diva too, but he was a different breed of diva. Michael Jordan himself has even said that playing the Pistons, my beloved Detroit Pistons, and I'm not going to lie here, who beat him up, and he whined about getting beat up because it wasn't what he wanted to do because of the Jordan rules. He got smacked around, didn't always get the calls he wanted, but it made him a better basketball player. These are his words. But then they changed the rules so that the beloved Pistons couldn't play that kind of basketball anymore because they wanted the diva rules. And that's what I call them, the diva rules. They can walk, they can carry, they can travel They can flop. They can do whatever the hell they want as long as they're that guy. And it gets worse. Now, baseball, it's not so much a diva as it is, I'm better than everybody else. Aaron Judge is going to have a softer strike zone than everybody else because they want him to hit home runs. And if an ump starts calling a tight strike zone, guess what? Aaron's not going to be happy about it. Pitchers, the same way. They want a pitcher to have a good day, he's going to have a little wider on that plate. But if he's not getting that curveball or that knuckleball or that slider like he wants, he's going to diva out. And now that brings us to the worst offenders, the National Football League. Now, personally, I believe it starts in college because you have these superb athletes who in college are going to be better than some of the college players around them. And when they get to the NFL, they expect to be able to get by on their athleticism. But unfortunately, everybody in the NFL is just as good as an athlete. They may be a different style of athlete, but guess what? They're just as good. And because they're just as good, you're not going to get away with outrunning them, outleaping them. You're going to have to be beyond just physically good. You're going to have to run the right routes. You're going to have to throw the ball at the right time. You're going to have to be in the right place to make that tackle. You're going to have to actually play the game. Now, this brings me to where Divas started in the National Football League. And personally, I believe it begun with the wide receivers. And we're going to have to go back a while. It's not just in the 80s, or not in the 90s, the 2000s. It goes all the way back to the 70s. And in the 1970s, before the rules changed, cornerbacks could hit a receiver anywhere on the field they wanted. They could manhandle them. And the best who manhandled them is Pittsburgh Steelers Hall of Famer Mel Blount. And there's a rule change called the Blount Rule, which said that after 5 yards, you couldn't touch a receiver anymore. Because they wanted to elevate the game. They wanted to make it more pass-heavy. Because Terry Bradshaw won the MVP at quarterback, throwing 28 touchdowns. Today, a quarterback throws 28 touchdowns, and he's probably going to get cut. Well, that might be an exaggeration, but not by a lot. It would be an off year. It'd be, is he's lost it? You know, questions like that. But, so, Mel Blount, they changed the rules. He still played the game and still had a Hall of Fame career. Now, guess what? Receivers become divas. Because now if they get touched beyond that 5 yards, they're looking for that pass interference play. Someone touches their hip just wrong and they don't think they can make that break. They want a penalty flag. And this happens for a long time. And then the NFL begins to realize the receiver can't make those catches, those acrobatic catches that we want to see that elevate the game without the quarterback. And who becomes the ultimate diva? The National Football League quarterback. And we have been ripe with NFL divas. And there are very many of them. And we'll cover a few. But the thing is, the diva quarterback has to have a certain criteria. That criteria is, one, he has to be athletically gifted. Two, he can be mobile, but he can't be a scrambler. Because if he scrambles too much, he might be a runner. And then if he's a runner, he's not going to get those things. Because as a runner, you're going to get hit. He's also got to be star-worthy. He's got to be able to sell his team, his league, his conference, however you want to put it. Now, personally, I believe the list of divas is pretty exclusive. There's, of course, the GOAT himself, Tom Brady. He was a diva. I think it came after the third Super Bowl. They saw that he had this potential to be something that he even succeeded above and beyond. Who expected 7 Lombardi trophies? No, not me. Well, maybe. He is a Michigan man, but that's a different story. So he started looking for calls. You know, incomplete pass, his hands would go up and be like, wasn't that pass interference? And then there's other quarterbacks too. There's Peyton and Eli Manning. And the funny thing is, a quarterback who came along with them, Phillips Rivers, he tried to be a diva quarterback, but because he played in teams that kind of gave it away sometimes, he didn't get all the calls that he should have. And I'm going to say that as a fan. Sometimes he should have got some calls he didn't. And that's the thing with the diva culture, as I'm going to call it. Sometimes calls that are there are phantom, and then sometimes that calls should be there. It's all like they're overcorrecting. They're like, well, we gave him a diva call last week. I don't know if we can give him a diva call this week. And it's breeding a culture that I don't think is good for the game of football. You see, everybody wants to be a quarterback now. Everybody wants to be a quarterback because there's a different set of rules for them. You can't hit them the same way. You can't tackle them the same way. You can't pressure them the same way because they're quarterbacks. They're not football players. And I've kind of touched that on in some of my past podcasts. I want football players. And that's the thing where I'm talking about the scrambling quarterback who's more than a mobile quarterback. Scrambling quarterbacks don't get the calls. Cam Newton didn't get the calls. The highest paid quarterback in the league right now, Lamar Jackson, isn't going to get some of those calls. Ben Roethlisberger didn't get a lot of those calls because he was a little more mobile than he could have been in his earlier career. I remember in a game against Baltimore, he got a broken nose, blood coming down his face. No penalty call. But to get a broken nose, that should have been a helmet to the face, or a hands or helmet-to-helmet contact, however you want to call it, which as a quarterback is supposed to be an automatic 15-yard penalty. No penalty, because it was Ben Roethlisberger. But I've also seen quarterbacks get their face mask brushed and it's 15 yards, especially if their name is Brady, Manning, or, as I call the greatest offender of them all, Aaron Rodgers. Now I'm going to talk about Aaron for a minute here. First of all, to hold your team hostage for the last 5 years just to get what you want, that's a diva move. Aaron Rodgers is a gifted athlete. He's a good quarterback. He's not a team player. I would never want to play for Aaron Rodgers. And I'm sure there's lots of former Packers that would say the same thing. Aaron Rodgers personifies for me the diva mentality of the NFL quarterback these days. Oh, I want weapons to help me win, but I don't want to pay for them because it would cut into my money. I want every call that I possibly can get. Every time it's an incomplete pass, isn't it pass interference? Because I'm that good. Oh, I'm going to retire, but then I'm not going to retire because I suddenly have more in the tank, but I want it done my way. I want to have personnel powers. I want to know who I'm playing with. I want to be the GM. I want to do every job but be a professional football player. Because in his mind, he's not a professional football player. He's a quarterback. And he's a diva quarterback. And that is a problem with this game. If you're going to play quarterback, please remember you're a football player first. And now I'm going to get on my soapbox because this is my page and I can. Here's an example of somebody who's the anti-diva, as I'm going to put it. That's Hines Ward of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yes, I am a Pittsburgh Steeler fan, but I would say this even if he didn't play for Pittsburgh. Hines Ward was a quarterback in college. He came into the NFL and he changed positions to become a receiver because he wanted to play in the NFL and live out his dream. He did the least diva thing he could. He changed positions. And guess what? He was really damn good, and he should be in the Hall of Fame, and he's not. Why? Because he was a football player first. Hines Ward would block when needed. Hines Ward would tackle when there was an interception thrown or a fumble. Hines Ward would go one game without any catches and then come back next week and be part of the game plan and catch 12. He has decent stats. They're not crazy stats, but they're decent. There's people with less stats than him in the Hall of Fame. But he was the kind of football player who'd go out and he'd mix it up. It's the old adage, when you play football, you should have your head on a swivel. And Hines Ward would have his head on a swivel. He'd know when he was coming across the middle he was going to get hit, so he would set So that when he got hit, he delivered it first. If a ball was picked off, he'd go make a tackle, and he'd make sure that you got tackled. If there was a receiver who caught the ball and was trying to get some yards after carry, get a little yak going, he'd go lay the wood on somebody and give a block. Matter of fact, he got a reputation as a dirty player, because he would block so well. And guess what? It's not his fault the other players didn't have their head on a swivel, because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to know where you're on that field and how. And because of it, he's not in the Hall of Fame. I don't know if he's going to make the Hall of Fame, and that would be a damn shame. Because the Hall of Fame should be for football players and not divas. And now I go back to Mr. Rogers. I do not believe Aaron Rodgers belongs in the Hall of Fame. First of all, like I said, he's a gifted athlete, but he's not a team player. And because of it, they've lost out on potential championships when he was in Green Bay. And that's just it. If you're going to be in the Hall of Fame, you need to be a champion. You need to be a champion not only on the field, but off the field. And I'm sorry, he doesn't qualify. His self-centeredness, his all about me attitude, he takes my vote right there away. Yes, I believe Aaron Rodgers is an overrated quarterback. Because let's look at the people who should be in the Hall of Fame. Tom Brady. He was not the highest paid quarterback in his position, or the highest paid player in his position. He took pay cuts so that they could get talent around him so he could win. Ben Roethlisberger should be in the Hall of Fame. And he might not get in because of off-field issues. And some of the off-the-field issues that he had, I don't agree with. But what he did on the field, his numbers are up there. He's number 6 on yards, I believe it is. And he led the league twice in passing, and he's the only quarterback to have 2 back-to-back 6-touchdown performances. He has the most 500-yard games, and he's a winner. He won 2 Super Bowls, probably one of the best winning Super Bowl drives ever. But he also was the first $100 million player. And he was also the first quarterback to take a pay cut so they could go get him some help. And we can look at others. Drew Brees took pay cuts in St. Louis, or not St. Louis, but New Orleans. That's just it. Divas won't take pay cuts. We go back to the NBA. They want their Supermax contracts. We go to baseball. They want their Supermax contracts, or their $500 million for 20 years, or whatever it is. It's just me. And that's the personification of a diva. So Aaron Rodgers is overrated. He's overrated because he's a diva. He's overrated because he's not willing to be, a football player. He wants to be a quarterback. And there is the problem with modern sports in the divas. They want position players. I don't want position players. I want a team. And then you look at these guys who are chasing championships. Happens in every league. Right now, Hopkins from the Cardinals, he's chasing a championship. So I doubt highly he's going to be in New England. He'll probably end up in Kansas City or Philadelphia, maybe Buffalo, someplace where he can chase a champion. But true champions aren't bought, they're built. And divas are not champions. So if you want to win a championship out there, if you want to be part of something memorable and special, my suggestion is, if you're a basketball player, don't worry about how don't worry about how you look dunking. Don't worry about the highlight reels. Worry about the fundamentals. Learn how to dribble. Learn how to hit the free throw. Learn how to have a jump shot so you can go back. Play defense. If you're a hockey player, skate fast. Skate clean. But if you got to mix it up, mix it up. Don't be afraid to throw a check, and don't be afraid to get checked. Make sure you work on your wrist shot. Do all the fundamentals. Baseball, pitch, catch, throw. Whatever you need to do. Hit the batting cages. And if you're going to play football, remember this. Keep your damn head on a swivel. You're playing a rough, violent, intimidating, amazing game. They want you to block somebody? Block that guy. They want you to cut across the middle as a receiver? Cut across the middle. Take a hit. Guess what? You can deliver one too. You don't need to be the quarterback. You need to be the football player. And if your talent pushes you into the quarterback and they put you in that pocket, be the best quarterback you can be. If they want to hand off to you and hit the hole, then hit that damn hole. And I'm just telling you, you're going to have some great moments. Because that's what sports is about, great moments. It's not about the championships. For you it might be, but for us, the fans, it's about the moments. And I don't want moments where Aaron Rodgers is throwing his arms up and going, why isn't that pass interference? Or, what do you mean I grounded it? You don't whine. Be a goddamn football player. And that's why some of my favorite football players are football players. And my most favorite, I've already talked about, Hines Ward. So, since I'm still in my soapbox, I'm going to tell you right here and now, help me get Hines Ward in the Hall of Fame where he deserves to be. Because I'd rather go look at a bust of Hall of Fame. I'd rather go look at a Hall of Fame bust of Hines Ward and the other football players that are already there than Aaron Rodgers. This has been a Mikey moment. You take care of yourselves, and I'll see you around.